Welcome to r/Tales from the Jobsite, where I bring you stories from around the web and listener submissions that show some of the wacky sides of construction, remodeling, and more. I'm Uncle Reddit, and have I got a story for you. Animals and renovations don't mix well. I went out to do some painting on a home my partner and I had just finished, and the owners had already moved into. The lady of the house had left for work, and I was alone in the home. I proceeded to take an open 4-liter tin of paint, instead of just a small container, around touching up the woodwork in the carpeted living room. The homeowners had a parrot in a cage at the opposite end of the room that was supposed to be locked, but the lady forgot to lock the bird in, as it usually has the run of the house. I was touching up the skirtings and turned back to the paint can to dip the brush to find the parrot with its beak in the tin of paint. Oh my god. Surprised, I made a quick movement, and the parrot jumped back, pulling the entire can of paint over on the new carpet. I chased the parrot all over the house, making quite a scene, with feathers flying and both me and the bird squawking, before finally cornering and catching it. Let's just say I was beside myself. I got the parrot locked away and cleaned up what I could of the mess. When the homeowners returned, they were more than a little upset, accusing me of traumatizing their parrot and making it ill. Actually, I think I was the one who was traumatized. It's been 14 years now, but I still tell friends about the episode, and we have a laugh over that darn parrot. Yeah, there's two people at fault here. The homeowner should always lock up their pets. You know, I don't want to be responsible for letting Fido out, their kitty cat out, them getting poisoned by some chemical that I'm using for the job, things like that. Yeah, that's just never a good idea. Lock your pets up, take them out of the house for the day if you want or need to. Then there's the painter. You never, ever take a full... Well, for us in the U.S., it would be a gallon. That'd be like me touching up the baseboards and, door casings with a whole gallon of paint just, for no reason at all other than I didn't want to pour it into a smaller container. Invariably, something's going to knock that can over. Measure twice. We got a couple stories from this guy, so let's get into it. My father-in-law is tasked with transporting a rather large piece of construction equipment to another part of the state down an old highway. It has to be loaded on a heavy-duty tractor trailer. It's huge, tall, wide, and expensive. My father-in-law prefers traveling late at night where there isn't as much traffic and there's a lower chance of ending up in an accident. Because of the size, he's required to contact the State Department of Transit, DOT, and get permission to go down the highway so as to make sure it can safely pass under the bridges on the way. My father-in-law takes time to measure the height and width at least 3 times. So he starts off. About 4 hours in, around 2 a.m., he comes upon one of the lowest bridges on the route. The bridge has a sign on it saying the height is 13 foot 6 inches, which is about 6 inches higher than the equipment he's hauling. He knows it's going to be a tight fit, but feels confident he'll make it. You already know what happens. Yep, he crashes right into the bridge. He calls the state police, who show up with a DOT inspector, who just happens to be an old friend of my father-in-law. Inspector: Man, father-in-law, you did a number on that old bridge. I'm awfully sorry, but I'm going to have to hit you with a number of fines, and this could affect your license. Father-in-law: No, don't apologize. This is my fault. I screwed up. You got to do what you got to do. I just don't understand it. I measured carefully, and I usually don't mess up like this. Thank God there weren't any other cars around. There is at least $20,000 in damage to equipment, and I don't even want to think about the damage to that old bridge. As they're inspecting the damage, my father-in-law notices that one of the state troopers almost falls off the side of the road because it's pretty high up. He begins looking up at the bridge and down at the road. He turns to one of the state troopers and asks him if he would mind measuring the height of the bridge from the road. He does, and it comes out as 12 foot 11 inches. A whole 7 inches shorter than the measurement on the sign and the paperwork the inspector has. My father-in-law points it out. The state police begin measuring all along the road under the bridge. It comes out the same. The inspector is completely confused. My father-in-law calls him over to the edge of the road. Father-in-law: I think I know what happened. Look at the road here and the layers of asphalt. The inspector comes over. Inspector: Looks like fresh asphalt. Yeah, they just repaved the road, but that doesn't add 7 inches to the road. Father-in-law: Yeah, but how do they normally pave a road? Inspector: They scrape up the old pavement and... He trails off, rolls his eyes, and lets out a cuss word. State Trooper. Could you all let us in on it? What's the problem? Father-in-law. The way you're supposed to pave a new road is you tear up the old pavement and then put down the new asphalt. It's what they do on the interstates. But this is an old highway that's been here for 70 years and they tend to not be as thorough. They just lay down new on old and... State Trooper. Build up the height of the old road. Father-in-law. Yeah, it's not uncommon on these backcountry roads, and this one has about 70 years worth of layers on it. I just had never had an issue before now. The inspector and state troopers stated that my father-in-law was not at fault. However, from then on, my father-in-law sent a lead vehicle 2 hours ahead of him to measure every bridge he had to go under to make doubly sure that it was safe. Yeah, father-in-law did his due diligence, that's for sure. And I have run across a few bridges that weren't quite as high off the road as they stayed on their signs. Oil's well that ends well. Another story from father-in-law. The construction company that he works for teams up with another company to do a very big and lucrative highway job. My father-in-law has a lot of experience with repairing big machines, so they send him to the site to work on the big and incredibly expensive machines. The mechanic from the other company, for some unknown reason, takes great offense that my father-in-law was put in charge and is just a jerk the whole time. He argues with him every chance he gets, even over things as simple as putting the correct type of oil in the machinery. My father-in-law gets a call and has to go home for a family emergency. He instructs the mechanic and the helpers from the other company that he's in the middle of changing the oil on a piece of equipment and asks them to finish it. He gets an urgent call the next day to come into the job site, which he quickly does. In the office, the owners of the construction company and some bigwigs from the other company are arguing, with the other mechanic sitting in the corner with his arms crossed and a smug look on his face. Apparently, the piece of equipment's engine froze, which resulted in something worth several hundreds of thousands of dollars being worth nothing but scrap. The company blames my father-in-law because he was working on it, and they're demanding that the construction company replace it. My father-in-law figures out what happened pretty quickly. He tells them he'll be right back, and he returns with a box and a scared-looking helper. He dumps out the box of parts onto the table. They're bluish in color, which is what happens to engine parts when they're run without oil. He gives the poor helper an angry look and growls, "Tell them." The helper stammers that they restarted the engine without any oil because the other mechanic told them to. At that point, the mechanic in the corner looks scared and starts getting angry looks from his bosses. Before storming out, my father-in-law yells, "It won't run without friggin' oil, dumb eh?" The outcome was the mechanic lost his job and was blacklisted from several other construction companies as word got around, and the company apologized to my father-in-law and had to pay over $200,000 to replace the equipment. The owner of the construction company took my father-in-law out for a steak dinner. Yeah, I'll never understand why some people are that way. They're just bitter people. They always have to feel challenged or feel like challenging the other person just because, I don't know, they feel put upon or like somebody's trying to steal their job. I don't know. I just don't understand why people have to be that bitter and sour. Sign, everywhere a sign. The city puts a notice sign up on my street announcing that they'll be doing road work tomorrow, and the street will be closed to all but local traffic from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. I make sure to leave my house by 7:30 a.m. Fast forward to 6 p.m. I'm driving home from work when I see city trucks blocking half the entrance to my street, and approximately 10 workers standing around talking. I can see the notice sign peeking out from behind the truck. There aren't any barriers blocking the street, so I hit my turn signal. One of the workers runs toward my car and motions for me to stop. I stop and roll down my window. Me. Yes? Worker. You can't go down there. Me. I live here. I can show you my ID. He shakes his head. You can't go. Me. Your sign says local traffic only. I am local traffic. I live about 500 feet away, literally right there, as I point to my house. Worker. Yeah, we're not done. Me. All I see is a completely unchanged road and 10 guys standing around doing nothing. Worker. We'll be done in about 2 hours. Come back then. Me. 2 hours? Listen, I left my house at 7:30 this morning because your stupid sign said local traffic only from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. I am local traffic and my clock says it's 6 o'clock. Go check your sign. It's right behind your truck. Conveniently moved out of sight, of course. Me. Go check. I'll wait. I've got a full tank of gas. I put the car in park and fold my arms. He goes to check the sign, sighs, and comes back. Without a word, he moves aside and waves me through. Me. That's what I thought. For For those who are curious, there wasn't another way into the neighborhood. One way in, one way out. The next day there was a sign up with altered hours of 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., but then they showed up at 8 a.m. Thankfully, I had the day off. Yeah, I'll be damned, man. You're not going to block me from getting in and out of my house when, A, there's only one in and one out, and I'm just following the rules that you put up on your sign. Kilo Mike Alpha. Seeing a dangerous pattern emerging here. I'm an adult woman. My husband and I live in a home which is about 30 years old. The master bathroom upstairs has all original fixtures, so you can imagine they're starting to look pretty shabby, and not in a shabby chic sort of way. We decided to remodel. The company we end up hiring to take care of the tub/shower and surround comes in and begins working. After a few hours, me. Hey, I just looked at the shower liner you have there and it's not what we ordered. Construction guy. You said it was the right one. Me. No, you asked me if mine were white, and I said yes. And then you brought in these. Ours are white, but they're also a completely different pattern. Construction guy. No, this is not my fault. You said it was the right one. He actually continues to argue with me over it for several minutes. I try explaining differently. Me. Regardless of what you thought I said earlier, this is not what we ordered. Look here on my copy of the order form. See, it says 4-inch by 4-inch tiles. Incredibly, the man still argues that it's my fault. Exasperated, I switch tactics again. Me. Okay, but I snapped a photo and texted it to my husband and he said it's not the right one. Construction guy immediately calm. Oh, well, okay, we have to go back to the warehouse then. He calls his boss and admits over the phone that even though he had read our order form and saw the pattern and style name on our order, he still grabbed the flat white liner anyway. Then he tries to blame the problem on me again, while he's waiting for his coworker to go back to the warehouse to grab the right stuff. Construction guy. So what do you do for a living? Me. I'm self-employed. I do graphic design, web design, that sort of thing. Construction guy, condescendingly. Oh, well, I could do that too if I didn't have to work in construction. Me. Oh yeah? Then why aren't you? Construction guy. Well, I have to make money. You know, I can't just stop working and do that. He continues to belittle my line of work until I refuse to talk about it further. Finally, his coworker comes back. They finish the installation and my husband arrives home in time to see the finished work. Husband. So why is the faucet leaking? Construction guy. Oh, that? It's nothing. Here, I'll fix it. He dabbed some caulk over the point at which the water was leaking. Later, we used the shower for the first time and the water came pouring out of the downstairs walls below the shower. Turns out this guy half-aided the last of the work and rather than fixing the leak, he just covered it up. That whole fiasco is a story for another day, but suffice it to say, we will not be using this particular bathroom remodel company ever again. Yeah, I could tell right off the bat this guy was going to be a crappy guy. You know, you don't start out arguing. If I'm the contractor and I think I'm right, I'm not going to sit there and start yelling at you. What I'll do is say, hey, let's check the paperwork, double check things, and just make sure. You know, I mean, I can make mistakes. It happens. And if I'm wrong, hey, sorry about that. We'll go get the right one. But this guy was a joke right from the start. You know, leaky pipes, pick the wrong stuff. I'd guarantee you that surround's going to come off the wall in just a few months' time. An alarming rate of alarming. I'm a resident assistant in a hall occupied almost entirely by freshmen. In essence, I'm a poorly paid babysitter. A few days into the fall semester, the fire alarm goes off around 11 p.m. I usher all the sleepy freshmen out of the building and across the street, and we wait for the firefighters to give us the all clear. Eventually, we're able to go back inside, but that's not the end of it. We have to check the student's ID of every single person. Mind you, 650 students live in this building, not counting overnight guests. It takes a long time, but it's necessary to keep students safe and prevent strangers from entering the building. Finally, everyone's sorted and the RAs can go back to bed. I've just fallen into a blissful sleep when I'm awakened again by the sound of a fire alarm. I look at my clock and see that it's 3 a.m. Grudgingly, I get out of bed and we do the same song and dance. It takes the firefighters less time to do this round and we end up going to bed within an hour. I'm appalled when, just before dawn, the fire alarm goes off again. I notice that far fewer people are outside than the previous two alarms, which I later learn is because many students elected to just stay in bed and endure the ear-splitting alarm, and make it that much harder for the rest of us since we can't get the all clear until everyone has left the building. Finally, we get back inside, and I get a couple more hours of sleep before my 9 a.m. class. Later, I'm talking to my boss and discover the reason we had so many alarms in one night. There's a dining hall on the first floor of the building, and it was being renovated all summer. They had finally finished construction that week, but somehow messed up the wiring such that it repeatedly triggered the fire alarm. After the third alarm, they finally fixed it. Well, I don't know where this campus is located, but I know when I did construction, we had to have everything inspected, and I mean everything. You know, it's not just building inspectors either. I mean, you have specialist inspectors for things like alarms and elevators, and so I'm just not sure how they didn't end up with getting a fault or something when they did their tests. The only thing I can figure is somebody didn't actually test it. There being the bigger headache. I'm an apprentice with a construction company. During the final stages of a 5-story building being put up, when the scaffolding is coming down, a rather treacherous process, as despite the best efforts of people involved, heavy boards, support framing, and tools will be dropped. I'm tasked with keeping onlookers from getting too close to the building site, in addition to my other more construction-focused duties. Mind you, there are fences, barriers, caution tape, and warning signs all over the place, in a 50 to 100 foot radius around the building, and somehow people still think it's okay to just walk right up to the building. We get at least one a day. This couple takes the cake for idiocy, though. Couple steps over the caution tape and walks up to the south side of the building. Me: "Hey folks, you can't be here. This is an active construction site. I'm going to need you to get over to the other side of the tape there." And I gesture at the caution tape, cordoning off the construction site. Man: "Oh, okay, sorry." They walk off. I get back to work thinking that's the end of it. 20 minutes later, I happen to glance up and there's that same couple on the east side of the building. Me: "Hey, sorry if I wasn't clear before, but I really need you to stay behind the tape over there." I gesture again at the caution tape, cordoning off the construction site. "You could get hurt." Man: Sorry. They walk off again. Me to myself: "Geez, must be a language barrier or something." I go back to work. Not 10 minutes later, I hear one of the guys on the scaffolding removal crew yell out, "Headache!" For those of you not familiar, that means I dropped something heavy, look out below. I look up to see a scaffolding board crash to the earth mere feet away from the same darn couple, who are back on the south side of the building. Me racing over, now screaming at the top of my lungs, "Clear out! Get the F out! Do you have an effing death wish?" They both went white as sheets, turned on their heels, and Usain bolted right the heck away from the building. It only occurred to me after the adrenaline wore off that I hadn't bothered to put down my hammer when I was chasing them off. So it very likely looked like I was ready to bash their skulls in with it, especially if there was a language barrier. Sorry, random couple, but for the love of whoever or whatever you pray to, don't cross the damn caution tape. Language barrier or not, they could tell that that was definitely a cordoned off area and they shouldn't be in there. People just think they're special. Hey guys, thanks for hanging out with me today. If you've enjoyed this content, would you do me a favor? Would you consider giving this video a like? Subscribe to the channel and maybe click on the little bell icon so you don't miss the fat guy with the beard telling you stories. See ya!